pretty upset not being able to actually come through and rebuild this King Quad exhaust back in the day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to redeem myself and make this the exhaust for the Quad Buggy. As you heard in a couple of videos ago, the exhaust is really loud. So it's because there normally is a canister on here with a spark arrestor in it. So what I'm going to do is tone it down to about that. And luckily enough, my brother gave me the muffler off of his Mini that he decided he wanted to upgrade. So I think I'm going to put this as a little downspout off the back of the muffler. Alright, so I got it done and I got it mounted back on there. And I ran out of welding gas, so unfortunately it's not welded all the way around on the chrome tip. As you can see underneath there, I was only able to get about 2 or 3 inches of weld. It's pretty ugly because I was combating with the original weld where that tip welded up to the original exhaust pipe. But for the most part, it looks pretty good. It's not like, I don't know, it's not sporty looking really, it's kind of like purpose looking, you know, purpose built. It's different. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. I was looking at a bunch of side-by-sides and stuff like that, and some of the performance exhausts have that like 45-degree turnout on them. And what's cool is it is a center mount exhaust, so it kind of has that look, and it does follow the contour of the tires, which is kind of cool too. So yeah, I'm pretty okay with that.
Well, between here and now, I ended up losing a bunch of my video because of a couple of cards that went bad. So what I ended up doing is buying a 1992 King Quad for about $70. The engine's completely trash, basically. So I took it and took the front brakes, front suspension, front A-arms, everything but the front diff out and put it onto the Quadrunner. That gave me about 50 inches of width total on the front end, and it matches the back end almost perfectly. I also refurbished everything on the front end, so the A-arms, the springs, the shocks, the CV joints, everything was redone again for the King Quad parts. So now I have a bunch of spares that won't fit anything I own, but now at least what's going to be installed is refreshed and just like new. So after we had the front end squared away, what we decided to do was chop the whole thing in half. Yes, finally we chopped it in half. I had a nice little video set up for this, but again, I lost the footage and I'm really upset about it. But we did get it chopped in half. I ended up chopping it about 4 inches back from the steering plate and about, I think it was 6 inches back from the down tubes. Plenty of room to be able to slide tubing over, rosette weld it, and have a nice strong frame.
Alright, so we're starting to work on the frame here, and I cleaned off the tabs that were on here. There was a couple of these little tabs with welded in nuts to hold the foot pedals on, the foot pegs, so I took those off. I'm going to save them because I think I want to reuse them. One of them is used to actually hold the guard onto the exhaust, and I want to keep that because this will remain open for the most part. So I've measured out that I need 30.5 inches, hard to see, between this rail and this rail in order to make a 20-inch gap. It was, I think the last time you saw this, I had it at about 22 inches. That's a little too long. Pay no regard to this. I'm just playing around with stuff here. So that's a little bit too long. So 20 inches is gonna be perfect. So right now I've cut a piece of 60-inch steel pipe. That is, it's actually pipe. It's not tubing. So it's just really, really heavy wall, Schedule 40 pipe. Basically this stuff right here. So that's the wall that you're dealing with. If you look at the wall that it's going to go into, pardon the rust, but that's some really, really thin stuff. So I'm trying to work out some coping here. The only problem with pipe, of course, is that massive weld on the inside of it. But I'm trying to play with coping because if you look at the frame, see if I can get this pipe out of the way. So those two pieces of pipe right now are actually cut at 30 inches. So I did some math just before I give up here and forget what I was going to show you. As that sits, I want to cut it off at the first mark, and then the second mark here, the second mark there is actually 2 inches further back, because the whole front end needs to come back 2 inches in order to get me to the 20 inch. Right now I'm at 32, about 32 and a half, so I want to bring it in 2 inches. And the only way to get space is to do that, because it won't clear where this flange is welded on, where this cope is. So I did bend these out a little bit in either direction, and I bent these ones in a little bit. So I have, as you can see on this one, a much straighter shot to get these lined up. I did put a little heat on them. But I thought it was pretty interesting how the factory has this gusset, this coped gusset, which is basically a half-round piece of pipe that eventually feeds back into the frame here. And there's just a little bit of weld every couple of inches on this seam. So what I wanted to kind of do was, if I can get the pipe to come all the way down, cap the bottom and weld it into this second piece. I figured that would make it a whole lot stronger. I'm having a little bit of trouble though, because as you see, I tried it with this pipe to get it on there and, you know, hammer it forward. However, I'm dealing with a bit of an uneven pipe here. If you can see underneath, that sucker's been crushed. So I got the front of it pretty well rounded. As with the front, I got the front pretty well rounded. There's a little bit of a crush still in the bottom of that pipe there. But what I've been doing is basically taking this little piece of tubing, and I kind of rounded it a bit, and I've been sticking it in the pipe and kind of working it around and then hammering it in and trying to get that dent out from the inside. I think I have to work at it a little bit longer. The other side, get that one out of the way. The other side is nearly perfect. However, I'm running into the same problem where I can get it to go on, but it kind of hangs up, and I think it's due to that weld on the inside of the pipe. So I think once I get them cut and get my measurements figured out, I can pound it in really hard and try to get my seam to match with this seam. For most of the fabricating outside of the frame, you know, this isn't the best stuff to use. I'm not going to recommend using it to you because it's not so easy to use. I'm using it because it's what I have cheapest. It's what's available. It's what I am comfortable dealing with. I've seen other people do it like this. Musty One, he's done it, and a couple other guys have done it with black pipe. And I'm not, you know, I don't really care. I'm going to have an X in the frame on both sides. I'm going to have an X across the bottom of the frame to tie everything in. So structurally, it should be fine. Plus, I have a pipe bender. I don't have a tubing bender. So it's going to be a little bit easier for me to make bends and stuff. As you can see, my pipe bender does a pretty good job, and it doesn't really mar the pipe at all. So you're not going to know once I paint it anyway, so I don't even know why I'm explaining that to you guys. What I'm getting at here is the rest of this is basically going to be square tubing. There's going to be square tubing coming off the top and bottom, the front and back, to basically frame out the passenger compartment, the pedal box, the seat mounts, all that's going to be square tubing. Then there's going to be an additional kind of like a rub rail all the way around, which will be made out of maybe 1 1/4 inch or 1 1/2 inch black pipe, or, you know, that pipe. So I can make nice radiuses, bend it down. It's basically going to follow the line of the fender. If you look at the King Quad, it's going to basically come down straight across the bottom, up, and follow that and tie into the front bumper. And then, like I said before, there's going to be kind of like a side on the side of it. So that's where I'm at. I will check back in with you when, I don't know, maybe when I have that all mocked up. All right, so this is where we are now. Of course, I didn't get to film most of this because I just wanted to spend the day working. So I've got everything tacked in place except for these two diagonal bars. I've got all the pipes drilled that are the over pipes with top and bottom spots for rosettes. This one I was able to actually make the angle come down. I'm going to fill all this with weld because I want this to kind of be a trellis. If you see, the back comes down this way, then up, then down. When I go up, then down, then up. Just kind of to follow the way that the frame naturally wants to be, I guess. The problem I'm having right now, so that's the other part is I wanted you to see, is I decided to come, the past couple of times I've seen people do this, they have just come straight back on an angle to the back section here, wherever they cut it. I decided I wanted to be flat across the top and then drop back. The reason for that is because I want to run that fuel cell, as I showed you before, and I want the fuel cell to be in the stock location. Now, this is going to be kind of hard to show you with one hand, but I'm going to try to do it. I basically want the fuel cell to run inside the rails like that. However, right now, I'm running into a problem with these two rails and the front rail here. I kind of want to notch, let me put this back down. I kind of want to notch this out here and here so it can fit in between these rails on this side. I started thinking about it again. I don't know if I actually want to cut this out. There's a lot of structure here, and it's actually, it actually makes the frame look really, really good this way. Not that you're going to see the frame anyway, but anyway, yeah, so that's the idea. So I still have to work on getting the tank fitted. That's going to be the next thing I do. Maybe just modifying this back flange will get it to fit. But right now it doesn't fit with the way that these two cross pieces are. For the top, I ended up taking, again, a piece of 3/4 inch, or I think that was even smaller than that. That might have been 1/2 inch. Anywho, that. Took a piece of that. Had to turn it down and made a bunch of plugs that went about yay big, front and back. So there's a piece hammered all the way into here as far as it'll go, and it comes back about yay far. So there's, again, I just did the rosettes on top because I still have to clean up all the paint and everything. I did have to heat these and lift these up to straighten them out. So that was the only change I made to the frame in the front. Did nothing to the back here, just basically lopped it off, and that's the way it was left. So my shop, utter mess, but I'm almost at the end of the fabrication stage. As you can see, we're pretty square here. Looking right up the frame. I did take a ton of measurements too, so I'm from this hole to that hole right there where the suspension, where the racks mount. This is 64 inches from the center of that hole to the back of this plate. And on this one, to the back of this plate to the center of that hole is 64 1/8. So there's minimal amount of wiggle waggle going on here. It's exact 42 inches tire to tire, tire to tire. Everything in the center is exactly that, like 19 3/4 to 12. Like, yeah, well, let's say, I think it might have been 20 inches on the dot or 19 inches on the dot on the bottom, and the top had a little bit off left to right, but like I said, only about by 1/8 of an inch. And I did stretch and pull, and I had a ratchet strap in there, really making sure everything was tight. So I think it's going to track fine. It's, you know, we're not talking about going 100,000 miles an hour on asphalt. We're just, you know, using a buggy off-road. Alright, so before we put this thing on the ground, I started to fab up the gas tank mount, and I wanted to utilize this little, I don't know, windage tray. It basically keeps junk from getting out on top of your drive shaft in here and stuff. And this mates up with the fender, so it keeps mud from getting into where the passenger compartment's going to be. So, let me turn around here so you can see on the light side. I basically shaved about 1/2 inch off of this side of the angle iron, so it fits this, fits that angle pretty well. I reamed out the holes, I reamed out the holes here to accept the original rubber mounts. So I'm gonna have to trim the rubber mount down about 1/8 of an inch or so, maybe 1/4 of an inch, to get it to sit flush. And I'll also have to do that to the, there's little metal kind of sleeves that go inside of these that I'm going to have to do that too. I decided to not use the bottom here. I'm going to use the front, and I did the same thing. I drilled and reamed a couple of holes out here. I'm going to have to cut those down as well, and I'm going to weld in this piece of flat stock across the front, so that way when the gas tank goes in, it's basically going to drop in on this. I can put the bolts in here, which I've already welded nuts to on the back side of that piece of flat stock. I just have to weld the nuts to the back side of this piece of angle iron on this one, and it looks like we'll be ready to rock. And that's gonna pretty much finalize the gas tank mounting, and then I'm gonna work on a sort of a shelf that goes in here to mount the fuel pump and the shut-off solenoid. I really don't know if I need a shut-off solenoid. I figure I can always wire it in, and they say these get really, really hot, so I don't know. You know, they say not to run them for more than 8 hours at a time. I can't see me running it more than 8 hours at a time because I'm putting a 2.5 gallon gas tank in there. So, you know, it is only a 250, so it may or may not, you know, sip all day on 2.5 gallons of gas, but I doubt it. So I have one of these. I'm going to mount them side by side, and then have the fuel tank come in, this go out, and then this go to probably a fuel filter, and then the carburetor. All right, update time. So we've got the frame all welded. I put 2 large gussets in the front, top and bottom, and 3 small gussets here on the back. Kind of matching them up left to right. Not the prettiest welds, but nobody's really going to see these anyway. They're all welded front and back. All of my plug welds are done, all of the rosettes, and all of the welds going around all the seams. So right now what I'm working on is getting the shifter connected to the center console. What I did was, the shifter used to be connected right here, but I cut that off and pulled the plastic plug out and shoved the plastic plug back in where it was connected. So that kind of worked out kind of handy, cleans that up a little bit. I took that shifter mount and I welded it up here, so now my shifter goes to the what used to be the front, the 4-wheel drive. Used to be 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive locked. So right now I'm trying to get it set in the center here, so I have full throw left, front, and back to use the shifter mechanism with that shifter. So basically what I did was I sawed off the pin. Like on this side there's a pin here that disengages. Kind of hard to see. There you go. It disengages and then goes front and back. So if it would focus on that, there you go. Disengages and you can freely move the shifter, and then it falls into place. I have the bolts going backwards just to kind of hold it in place for now. I took the lockout pin, which is in this top section, out. So now I have free range on the 4-wheel drive no matter where I put it. I can shift it no matter where. So right now I basically have a free shifter here. I took and I ground off the clevis that was on the shifter originally, and I welded it to a piece of this 1-inch bar stock. So if I pull that off of there, you can see I've got it welded on there. So now I'm trying to figure out my geometry to get this mounted here and on here to give me enough throw to shift it. So I'm going to work out the angles on that, and I'll get back to you when I figure that out. All right, so I've shortened up these mounts here, cleaned up the holes a lot better so there's no burrs or anything in them. So what I had to do is cut, about a 1/4 inch out of each of these mounts, and then cut down the little metal barrel that's inside of them. If you can see it in there. Cut down that, and then now when this gets cinched down, it'll cinch down right on the aluminum. It'll be nice and tight. So we're going to get this gas tank installed, and then we're going to start worrying about some other things that are in the way. right, so luckily enough, apparently 3/4 inch steel pipe, or black pipe, or whatever you want to call it. This isn't really black pipe, it's kind of just mild steel that's electro welded, but with that seam on the inside, that like gas pipe. Anyway, apparently that's perfectly straight. So 3/4 inch fit perfectly inside of this drive shaft originally. As you can see, the stock welds kind of have like a C-cut in them. So I did the same thing for my welds. I basically just ran a hole saw through them and then also rosette welded them. And my welds are getting slightly better. A lot of heat affected zone here, but I spent a lot of time filling those rosette welds, so not bad. Nice and straight, perfect length. Let's slide it in there and see how easy it is to take out and put in. Up through the front, past the differential, if you can see that, and then down into the coupler, and then we basically line right up here. I have about 1/4 inch that needs to come up, so that's good. So that gives me 1/4 inch to be able to remove it. We've got 4-wheel drive. That's pretty exciting. It's going to fit right in the stock location. Let me get one of those out of the way. Right there, it'll fit right in the stock location here, and there shouldn't be any interference with that little screen that goes in here. So that's exciting. And it keeps the overall dimension of the drive shaft down in here too, which is kind of good. There will be a skid plate, and I will have a cross member going in here as well. So I just have to make sure I can get past that cross member to install it. I don't want to put myself in a situation where I can't get that drive shaft in and out. But pretty happy with that. Okay, so where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with pretty much the strongest backbone any ATV has ever had. I've never seen a side-by-side or anything like that with any sort of frame like this. It's mainly the hoop and you know, your cage that does most of the work for you. But we've got our shifter all set, reverse, 4-wheel drive, or high-low, super low. We're gonna do something with our 4-wheel drive where we're gonna put that on the outside of the frame and run a 4th lever over here somewhere. We have a mounting place for our fuel pump and our solenoid shutoff. Our fuel tank is 100% bolted in. Our drive shaft is 100% complete. The exhaust is back on. The welds on the frame back here are all tidied up. The heat shield has been painted and put back in place. I'm going to have to do something about those bolts. And our steering is underway. And I don't think I've showed you guys what we're going to do with our steering setup, but it's going to be a coupler. I'm going to be wanting it to be easily removed. And that's going to be permanently affixed to the pivot point that was the stock pivot point for the bottom of the shaft. I just chopped it off, and then I put this splined coupler on for something that's going to go in that hole. And it has to do with that little package there. So we're in a really good spot. Everything is all shored up. All the supports that I'm going to put in are done. All the gussets I'm going to do are put in, and all the mounting spots for our underguard there, our what do you call that? A belly guard, brush guard, skid plate. Yeah, there you go, skid plate. So yeah, we're in pretty good shape. I got plenty of things going on over there. The whole place is a mess. Been plasma cutting and grinding and welding and drilling all day. And finally I've got a rolling chassis, and we're going to actually start making this operational. So we'll catch you on the next one, and thank you guys for sticking with us. 5,000 subscribers, it's pretty awesome. We're going to have a giveaway in the next video, and I hope you guys tune in. We will catch you on the next one.